For the record, this is not. It's not actually about Jeffrey Epstein. It's about Oprah, I guess. Hit piece on Oprah. For the record, I've never really watched her, but I thought it was kind of interesting. So we'll see. Maybe I'll keep this. Maybe I won't.
Ends with Jeffrey Epstein.
All right. There we go. Yeah, Oprah is not what you think she is. Not who you think she is by Patrickcc or something. I think.
Oprah Winfrey was not friends with Jeffrey Epstein. She never
Cap.
went to a Diddy.
To be fair, maybe Diddy. Well, I don't want to compare Jeffrey Epstein to Diddy because there are allegations that Diddy did stuff with Justin Bieber and stuff like that, but I don't know if he is a prolific type of. He wasn't as prolific as Jeffrey Epstein, but I think there were a lot of celebrities that were involved with him as well, and the stuff he was doing.
Party and somehow through.
Oh yeah. I think in Jeffrey Epstein's case, he was a proven this is actually what happened. In his case, there are allegations maybe that this is what's happened. That he did have underage parties where people were doing stuff and crap, but nothing proven in any case yet.
Throughout every controversy she ever faced over her 40-year career, it was merely just a misunderstanding, and she was completely innocent of any wrongdoing.
I guess maybe I'm going to end up this way too. I'm not for sure how long I want to make content for, but the notion that 40 years of your life is all kind of like you have content from every iteration of who you are and who you became, that's a little bit almost scary because my perspective does tend to shift from time to time. I'm a little bit like, well, what about this thing? I don't know. I don't know. For the record, I think people in Hollywood are maybe more duplicitous than your average thing, to the point where they're very willing to shift their perspectives depending on what's advantageous to them from a career perspective. They're like the actors are the politicians of artists. I thought, never mind.
Well, that's the official.
I was just thinking, I don't know if Hitler was actually the most he did probably the worst stuff as an artist. Not like he was doing it as an artist, but he was probably not the most morally reprobate artist. He did the worst things, but I think there are artists who were arguably far more depraved than he was.
Narrative. Whether she was platforming horrific offenders, exploiting victims for content, diverting attention away from Harvey Weinstein's crimes, starting a school in South Africa for young girls who ended up being abused by the employees, or her terrible Hawaii charity.
That's something too. I think I feel like a lot of foreign aid type things, if you don't stick with it and make sure it ends up correctly, this is to be a bit of a hot take, but generally speaking, whatever you want to say about a country, to some extent, the way the country is, take away the notion of imperialism, we'll take that into account, take away the notion of, sometimes bad people get into power. In fact, I tend to think the worst sorts of people are the most attracted to power. But the way a country is to some extent a commentary on the people who live there. People make the place to some extent. Right? So, to some extent, again, if you're going to do some sort of foreign aid, you might want to stick with it. Because, again, those people, they are, at least a little bit, to blame for the way that country is.
The official narrative is always that Oprah was just trying to do the right thing, and, unfortunately, it just didn't work.
They always are.
Out. But for some reason, if you scour across the internet, you will find that.
Wasn't there another lady who had gotten exposed really lately? I don't know if it's for the same thing. Again, I don't know what this is about technically, but Ellen DeGeneres, which it sounds like degenerate, so it's true, right? Now I think she was exposed for something like this. James Corden, they were TV hosts who effectively would have portrayed themselves as this really nice type of good guy, and then you find out behind the scenes that they're just really kind of jackasses. For the record, I try to be a jackass all the time, just in general. Belligerent half the time and helpfully helpful the other half. That's my formula.
That so many people think the billionaire is shady, hiding something, or potentially evil, which is the polar opposite of the mainstream opinion that she is a deeply empathetic woman who is extremely charitable with her money. So today we're going to deep dive into Oprah Winfrey's career and the controversies that kept getting reframed as misunderstandings, because at a certain point, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. She became both the youngest person and the first black woman to anchor the news at Nashville's WTVF TV at age 19. By 1984, she relocated to Chicago to host WLS TV's morning program, AM Chicago. And this was around the time that the industry started to realize the potential.
Do they mostly just name, like, news stations, just acronyms or something? So you think of most of them, like ABC, MSNBC. Like, there's just a lot of letters that they just stick together. Maybe it's some sort of... I don't know, you feel like you'd want to give it something a little bit more catchy, but it's the news, so maybe it doesn't need to be catchy.
Oprah had. AM Chicago became the city's #1 daytime talk show within a month, surpassing broadcasting legends like Donahue.
AM Chicago makes sense, because, you know, I'm assuming it's like, well, maybe it was a radio thing as well.
Everybody loves Oprah.
You mean me?
She's fun, she's hip, she's really got her style.
Say that a little louder, please.
Less than a year later, AM Chicago expanded to a full hour and was rebranded as The Oprah Winfrey Show, which entered national syndication in 1986 and became television's highest-rated talk show. Oprah knew how to excite a crowd or those watching at home, but she could also calm down and talk deeply and intimately about serious topics. She'd embrace the guest with her warm energy.
To be fair, like, it's kind of a little bit... It's one of those things where people often say, oh, the first black lady to do whatever. Like, this was actually probably back in a time when that actually meant something more so. It wasn't just someone trying to steal brownie points for, hey, look, we let so-and-so in the most patronizing way possible. We let them do blank thing.
And give them her full undivided attention, like her interview with Connie Francis where she discussed surviving sexual assault.
Everybody who has ever had to face it, and that's why it's so good that you're on here, because you think, I have problems? My goodness. Because you are such a superstar and have survived such traumatic...
But you're black. So she needs to check her... Never mind.
...things in your lives. If you could do it, then people feel like they can too.
But beyond celebrities, Oprah would interview ordinary people about issues that were not widely discussed on television. One particular episode revolved around normal couples who struggled with infertility problems.
Check your privilege. No.
Some other similar topics were women who snoop on their husbands, the complicated dynamics between...
I think there's a... Let's get astray into misogynistic territory, but I think quite often men's, like, this is not original with me, but I would get the idea that men's bad behavior, that's criminal, generally speaking. Women's bad behavior, not so much. It's more just of a, yeah, don't do that. It's not punished the same way, I think. Like, toxic male behavior as opposed to toxic female behavior is treated very different in societies. I'm not sure if that's well, I don't know.
Mothers and daughters, and even women who were involved in the usage or distribution of cocaine. Oprah's style of discussion felt natural and honest. Millions of viewers at home could relate to these testimonies, watching people on television describe experiences that they had gone through themselves. However, not everyone was exactly celebrating Oprah's newfound popularity. This article from 1988 is technically complimenting her, but it reads like they are insulting her.
My lady with a calling. Few would have bet on Oprah Winfrey's rise as the host of the most popular talk show in TV because she's black, in a field dominated by white males because she's black. She's a black woman of ample bulk. I don't think I've ever heard ample bulk used for quite a while. I don't think I've heard it used for quite a while. Usually over 190 pounds, though she lost 24 of them since starting a medically supervised all-liquid diet 3 weeks ago. As interviewers go, she's no match for, say, Phil Donahue, whose program was the obvious model for hers, so she's ripping stuff off. This is some sort of catty something. I don't know. That's kind of how it reads a little bit. Phil Donahue's program was an obvious model for hers. I mean, she ripped it off. What she lacks in journalistic toughness, she makes up for in plain-spoken curiosity. That weirdly sounds like her show was the model for Joe Rogan. Only Joe Rogan gets high on his. She makes up for in plain-spoken curiosity, robust humor, and above all, empathy. Again, kind of sounds like a model for Joe Rogan's podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. No, The Joe Rogan Experience. Is that how it says? It's some sort of weird AI voice, right? Joe Rogan by day. Alright, guests with sad stories to tell are apt to rouse a tear from Oprah's eye or get a comforting arm around the shoulder. I don't think Joe ever puts his arm around people's shoulders except for, like, maybe in photos. But not on the show. I think they sit across the table from one another or something.
Few would have bet on Oprah Winfrey's swift rise to host of the most popular talk show on TV. In a field dominated by white males, she is a black woman of ample bulk, usually over 190 pounds.
Sorry, it's not funny. I don't usually hear it described that way.
Though she has lost 24
All right, it's a little bit funny too.
them since starting a medically supervised all-liquid diet 3 weeks ago. What
But yeah, kudos to her for losing weight.
she lacks in journalistic toughness, however, she makes up in plain-spoken curiosity, robust humor, and above all, empathy. But before we dive deeper, hear me out for a second. You're eating french fries at the beach and you want to take a quick dip in the ocean, so you put a seagull on watch. That's not security, that's catering for the seagull. There's a reason you wouldn't trust a seagull with your fries, just like there's a reason you wouldn't trust your insurance company with your case. Morgan & Morgan has a proven track record of fighting for the people for over 35 years, with over $30 billion recovered
Why do I remember that name?
for their clients. Morgan & Morgan knows a thing or two about fighting to get you the compensation you deserve. Hiring Morgan & Morgan is like hiring an army to go into battle. They've got more than 1,000 lawyers and 100 offices nationwide. If you're injured by some
My grandpa tells a story. It's like, they call them... Well, it's not even really a story. It's just a comment about people who sue people for stuff. He says, they call those people sewers, right? It's a bad pun, probably, but...
forthepeople.com/Patrick.
Oh, sorry. All right.
Win. For more information, you can go to forthepeople.com/Patrick. Oprah faced prejudice about her race, weight, and lack of formal education. She came off as a regular person just trying to relate to regular people. But
Again, this is literally the black female Rogan. Well, technically, Joe Rogan is the white male Oprah. I guess that would be the way to say it.
beyond the prejudice, there were also real criticisms about how Oprah approached these topics. Her show focused more on how stories felt, rather than breaking them down in any kind of expert or academic way. Oprah wasn't bringing on special...
I feel like, I think I've said this before to some extent, like, I feel like low conviction commentary, like low research to some extent, low conviction commentary can work if you present it as such. But, yeah, sometimes, especially in situations like I've mentioned this before as well, never mind. Yeah, I think it can work, but you have to be honest about what you are and how you're presenting things.
Who could accurately explain why these people were in the situations that they were, but to be fair, many of the topics didn't really demand that level of analysis. These were everyday problems discussed by everyday people. But something interesting started to happen. Simply by hosting these conversations and validating people's stories, Oprah herself started to be viewed as someone to trust in a broad range of subjects. Even though she wasn't presenting any research, expert consensus, or long-term data, her authority got even stronger when she used herself as an experiment for extreme weight loss.
Yeah, I feel like she's not that thin these days, is she? But that might just be kind of aging or whatever. But to be fair, I think a lot of advocates for the like healthy at any size thing, that like since the rise of Ozempic and similar weight loss drugs, they've had to rethink their views a little bit. They've received epiphanies, and maybe it's better to be thin. It's, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Very few people. I think very few people really want to be fat. It's more just a giving up in my mind. And I, for the record, I know some people will never be super thin, but you can be probably better off, more healthy than what you are at the moment.
And it launched her into mainstream fame. Oprah went on a 4-month-long medically supervised fast program called OptiFast, where she bragged about not eating any food for the entire duration. OptiFast is considered a supplemental fast, meaning that the patients subsist on high-protein, vitamin-packed powder mixed with water. The formula is taken 5 times a day to substitute for eating. Total daily caloric intake is 420. Oprah went from 212 pounds to 145 pounds in 4 months. And to celebrate her new body, she brought out a wagon of disgusting fat that represented the amount that she had lost.
At the time, I felt it was important to show it in that way because I'd starved. I'd literally starved for 4 months or 4.5 months.
The fat loss episode in particular caught the eyes of 62 million viewers. During a period when everyone watched TV exclusively, this stunt almost got as much attention as the Super Bowl that same year. This was dangerous because it made an extreme, tightly controlled medical program look like a simple starvation diet, and the 62 million viewers who watched didn't have the doctors or financial means to attempt this safely. By Oprah celebrating the results with...
It is something like... It's an unfortunate reality that I think quite often, like, people like Dwayne Johnson or celebrities in general, I guess I don't necessarily want to single him out, that they can afford to do things that normal people can't, and if they represent it as, oh, this is entirely natural, it feels a little bit slimy, I think. I think the Kardashians would maybe be another type of thing where they've gotten work done, but they just kind of, oh, no, it's all... And incidentally, buy my product if you want to get this body that I have.
Without emphasizing the risks, the message became dangerously simple. This worked for me, so it could work for you. And suddenly, one supervised fast gave Oprah the perception as an expert in nutrition. She started making diet plans and dangerous foods
Oh, how the turntables.
recurring theme on her show, which would eventually get her into some major legal trouble down the road.
Dear.
But by 1988,
What's that?
show, which would eventually
That's Phil, right? Dr. Phil, I think? Am I wrong about that?
get her into some major legal trouble down the road. But by 1988, Oprah was on top of the world. She founded Harpo Studios, becoming the 3rd woman in American entertainment history to own her own studio. She now had more
Again, that's back in the day when that actually meant something in my mind. These days, people just do it to catch a headline or some crap.
potential than any other talk show host or any other media personality in history. She had massive ambitions, and it quickly became clear that she was willing to do anything to get to the top, pushing boundaries of what daytime television could get away with. Like when she brought on a gang of white supremacists on her show to discuss
It's, based. Again, I've said, though, like, I think when you're going to present something that's really divisive as a perspective, or something that's radicalizing as a perspective, it's nice if you can juxtapose it. But I guess in this case, she is the juxtaposition. Maybe. Possibly. I don't know.
their worldview.
I just heard what you said. You just said, I don't sit with monkeys. You think because she's black, because I'm black, we're monkeys? Is that...
That's a proven fact.
A bunch of low IQ racists came on Oprah to
The Japanese also have a weird type of thing. I don't know how many countries in the world actually have this, where they think that they originated from a different species, like some sort of polygenetic type of thing, where they originated from blank species, but everyone else originated from this species, and this is why they're better. I think that the Japanese would believe that they originated from some sort of special monkey. I'm not for sure about that. The Turkish believe they were born of some sort of interbreeding between wolves and a lady. So it gives them their air of superiority. I'm not sure. I think that's the thing.
spread hate, and she did very little to push back or challenge what they were saying. The very moment that the white supremacists left the show, Oprah realized that she had platformed a very dangerous group of individuals, and she swore to never do it again.
When they left, I made a decision that I would no longer allow the
I don't think that's the lesson to be learned. I think the idea is that you want to juxtapose bad ideas with good ideas, if possible. Generally, I take the notion that the truth is the best idea of all. It's the best idea for everyone, and it makes the most sense, I think, in most people's minds. It's the difference between like a subjective perspective that leaves a lot of stuff out and therefore is biased in one direction versus an omni perspective that is, unshakable to some extent. Like, you want to have those conversations, otherwise I guess I tend to think the evil will foment on its own. Which word I learned from Hassan. I'm not happy about that. I don't actually watch this stuff, but I watch people who watch stuff, and I heard that from Hassan. So I guess kudos to him for knowing a word I didn't. I hope that means what I think it means anyways.
platform that I had to be misused by people who were carrying any form of negative energy that could create more negative energy in the world. That what I thought I had been doing was allowing people to see how violent, how abusive, how not smart they were, that I was actually doing the opposite.
But this wasn't exactly the truth. Oprah continued to platform people with dangerous ideologies, and things got dark quickly. Winfrey slowly stepped away from logical, ordinary discussions and entertained more sensationalism. One of her
Oprah, it could be the plot of a horror movie, but it's not. Cults are growing, especially among young people. Find out how you're to save your kids. What the hell is this? Like, I agree, technically, that satanic worship is weird, but it's just weird to see it on a
most successful
TV
series
show.
was about a phenomenon called the Satanic Panic. It was a wave of moral panic that swept across the nation as many Americans
Oh, is she not taking the extremist position or something?
believed that secret satanic cults were abusing children, performing rituals, and infiltrating schools, daycares, and communities. For Oprah, it looked like she saw this as a great opportunity, regularly platforming anyone who made claims of experiencing satanic worship.
My next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals, cannibalism. What kinds of things went on in the family?
Babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to,
Babies.
there were people who bred babies in our family.
Despite lacking verifiable evidence, stories about
It's very sensational, so I imagine it would do well, but
supernatural or dark spirits kept viewers glued to the screen. The country's strong Christian values at the time helped fuel the hysteria, and the Satanic Panic became the modern version of the Salem witch trials. Some pastors even believed threats came from movies and video games. Heavy metal and hard rock bands like Iron
based. It's all this rock and roll. That's what's going on.
Maiden, Def Leppard, and Judas Priest were accused of pushing Satanism through their lyrics and dark imagery. In 1989, Michelle Smith, co-author of Michelle Remembers, appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show alongside Laurel Rose Wilson.
To be fair, I think a lot of those rock bands were degenerate, but I don't know if they were necessarily satanic. They were just kind of perverts or something.
Another publicized victim of satanic cults. Her claims appeared in the 1988 book Satan's Underground, where she detailed extreme graphic stories of supposed occult torture. However, her claims were debunked after investigators found that none of her claims of satanic ritual abuse could be verified. In her book, Wilson described being forced into cult ceremony.
I kind of want to see what the follow-on was, like where she actually kind of went off the rails, I guess. I'm going to skip the middle part. You can watch that if you want.
A bad year, and unfortunately it seemed like the richer she got, the more disconnected she became from reality. Like how
That does happen. For the record, there's a similarity between the way I think it happens when you get really rich versus children. The reason children are so weird in the way they think and the way they are is because by nature we try to shelter children from the outside world. There's no blow that isn't softened for them. They don't really deal with reality as it is. They deal with a reality that is cultivated for them so that they can develop in a stable environment. But that stable environment is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's not a naturally occurring thing. It's something that their parents make for them. And once they get out of that, they start to get a better, perhaps, idea of what reality really is. Point being, really rich people, kind of in the same bubble. Really pretty people, perhaps also a little bit in the same bubble. They don't experience reality as it is. They experience a reality that caters to them. And consequently, narcissism seems like the logical follow-on of that.
She held massive giveaways that ended up costing her own guests a small fortune, or how she decided to tackle poverty and education in Africa, only for her program to allegedly traumatize innocent children. Part of what made the Oprah Winfrey Show so famous was its large-scale giveaways to members of the live audience, which only grew her persona as a kind and charitable
And she was the original Mr. Beast.
woman. The segment was called Oprah's Favorite Things, and instead of giving away cheap electronics,
I'm not really a cupcake, but I am super baked, thanks to Mood Can.
Mood is third-party tested.
Winfrey would give away home renovations, wardrobe makeovers, group therapy retreats, or scholarships that could genuinely change someone's life. And every time the crowd absolutely lost their minds, something that was often made fun of by comedians.
The most expensive gift ever given away on Oprah's Favorite Things? A DVD Handycam valued at over $900!
Yes.
Everybody here gets humpback whales! You get a humpback whale, and you get a humpback whale!
But in typical Oprah fashion, to keep ratings
To be fair, I don't know if you can actually make fun of Ebonics these days. It's not really it's not on, old chap.
up, she kept making them bigger and bigger, eventually giving every single person in the audience a brand new car.
All right, open your boxes.
Holy crap. Dude, she makes Mr. Beast look like a wimp.
Open your boxes. 1, 2, 3. You get a car! 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 You get a car!
Oprah later looked back at the car giveaway saying, "That was one of the happiest days of my life. It delights me. It makes me so happy to see other people be happy and to be able to do that. That's one of the great joys of my life." The segment was
Happy might be a misnomer. It's more of a really hard hit of dopamine, I guess. Which, maybe it's the same thing, but to be fair, like I think that the type of bought goodwill that you have from something like that is not exactly the same thing as a genuine loyalty or something like that. I guess the never mind.
went down as one of the greatest talk show
No, I think that the goodwill of a mob is a very fickle thing. Put it that way.
moments in history, inspiring other hosts to attempt large-scale giveaways. However, for some people, being handed a new car was actually a massive liability. While the show covered sales tax and registration for all 267 cars, it didn't pay the gift tax. Audience members were suddenly expected to pay
Gift tax. I didn't even know that was a thing. So you gift, well, maybe it's just something with like businesses gifting things. I'm not for sure, but like the whole notion that like you give someone a gift, I assume that's not like a thing in most cases. Because like if someone just hands you like a family heirloom or something that's worth a lot of money, I'm pretty sure you don't have to pay a tax on that.
$7,000 depending on their tax bracket. The show's producer said, "It was devastating after because gift tax is a thing, and it's always a complicated thing when you're giving stuff away. But we paid for the sales tax and the registration for each car, and we told the audience after if they didn't want to have to pay a gift tax, they could actually take cash for the car. And because we didn't pay the gift tax, people complained to the press, and that was devastating." Now, of course, being upset with Oprah over this is a little wild.
I ordered 200 hand-forged knives to my dorm room and built a Wix website to sell them.
It's a generous gift, and it's even more generous to give people the alternative of just receiving cash. But it was showing a pattern that Oprah was sort of detached from regular people. She didn't appear to understand that just throwing money around doesn't solve problems. In fact, it can actually create more problems. She had to learn this the hard way when she started a school in South Africa, but things got so much darker than she ever could have imagined. Earlier in her career, Oprah met with South African President Nelson Mandela to discuss strategy.
I think Morgan Freeman played him. I don't know if it's not exactly a great likeness. I think people get the idea that just because people are black, that they look very similar. They just don't. Not necessarily. If you look at even between these two here, the cheekbones of this guy way wider. I'm thinking East Africa would have had maybe trade with Asia, so he would almost have, I guess I don't know though. He almost has more like Asian features and stuff like that, almost. As well as, obviously the darker skin.
Strategies for addressing poverty. During her stay at the Mandela's home, she expressed her belief that education is key to leveling the playing field and shared her dream to build a school for girls in their country. 5 years later, the Oprah Winfrey...
That's true, actually. I would guess... Sorry. The thing about education, I think, being a huge part of leveling the playing field. Because I tend to think like one of the... If you were a really rich person, one of the things you would maybe want to give your children more than all the money you could give them is a really good education, because that, I think, I've gotten the idea that I think by the first generation is maybe the grandchildren or something like that. I'm thinking like 70% of fortunes are squandered. By the third generation, I'm thinking it's something like 90%. Like I think it'd be like the great grandchildren. So like as far as like political or like commercial dynasties or stuff like that, doesn't really happen. But if you can gift your children a good education, probably one of the best things you can do for them.
Free Leadership Academy for Girls opened its doors. She poured $40 million into the 28-building campus for poor and disadvantaged girls.
It can be a place of learning as well as living for them. We have to have a theater because this is a school for leaders, and in order to be a leader, you have to
I don't know about that.
have a voice. You have to have a voice. You need oration. So the idea for the school came about based on what I felt would be an honor for the African girls.
And all this for free. Free uniforms, free books, free meals. Everything is free. At Oprah School.
Initially, she was criticized for being too extravagant. Critics questioned whether high thread count sheep...
I kind of agree with that. Like, it feels like if you're going into a third world country, like, you probably want to be pretty practical about what you give them. Like, this is what they actually need versus this is what looks cool on camera or something like that. I don't know. I feel like generally, like, you can even maybe see this with some of, like, Mr. Beast stuff. Like, a lot of it is perhaps done for the optical romanticism of it. Like, it has to look good on camera as well as actually be functional for the people, where I think you might just be better off just trying to get them stuff that they actually need.
It's in the dormitories, a beauty salon, 2 theaters, and a
beauty salon.
dedicated yoga studio were necessary for an institution serving girls from impoverished communities. However, horrific allegations between 2007 and 2010 made the situation far more serious.
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is Base 44.
A dormitory employee, Virginia Macapo, was arrested on charges including assault, indecent
Okay, the plot thickens.
assault, and soliciting underage
and escalates
girls to perform indecent acts. At least 7 victims came forward, and Winfrey was shook to her core about these horrifying statements. She flew down to South Africa immediately. Winfrey, who called herself Mama Bear, praised the girls who reported the abuse. As often is the case, child abuse, sexual abuse happens right within the confines of the people you know.
There's a point to be made that I think, generally speaking, people who are abusers, they almost want to put themselves in a position where they have authority over the individuals involved, and also in a position where they're kind of seen as a type of parasitic reputational theft, a little bit, where they are seen as good and virtuous and whatever, so that they're almost above question. Hence priests, hence teachers, hence Boy Scout leaders or some crap and stuff like that.
Personally spoke to all the girls and encouraged them to come forward over this. abuse claims. The girls are receiving counseling. I told the girls that we are going to clean out the school. There is still a lot of potential there, but Oprah may have overcorrected the problem and made the school even worse. After firing a ton of staff and implementing new rules, one parent described the school as now isolating its pupils from society, while others described it more like an abduction, where they sometimes couldn't even see their children. According to some of these parents, the school seemed like a detention camp. Witnesses stated, "We had only 2 hours to see my child. Surely this isn't a prison or an institution. The poor children are not even allowed to have any treats. Their diet is fruit, yogurt, and sandwiches."
What do you consider yogurt?
Previous week, there was a meeting for parents and guardians with the staff, and these issues were not brought up. Once again, Oprah, on her pursuit to make herself look better and extremely charitable, she completely misses the mark of what these mothers actually want. And it's ironic that she called herself Mama Bear to these girls when she really knows nothing about motherhood. She once said, "When people were pressuring me to get married and have children, I knew I was not going to be a person that ever regretted not having them, because I feel like I am a mother to the world's children." Now, being a
That's nice. All right, you can go check out the rest of it if you want. Yeah, Patrickcc, Oprah is not what you think she is.